And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vassell.
There will come a day when people realize that setting a theme in the Nile in ancient Egypt is not nearly as exciting as you may think it is. Rhino Cornelius still has to figure this out, but hey, whatever. Here's a new card game called Nile, the game of ancient agriculture. Don't run, it's just a card game that uses the Nile as a pasted-on theme, but it actually works slightly. And the game itself is fairly fun. I would say it's more than mediocre. It's good, but the game says 2 to 5 players. You're best off playing with 3 or 4 at the most. Probably 3 is where the sweet spot for this game is. So let me show you a little bit about the game. In the middle of the table is a flood card, as well as a draw pile of cards. Now this draw pile is made up of different resource cards. We have papyrus, we have lettuce, wheat, flax, and castor. What a wonderful collection it is. You're just dying to get these. I guess the artwork's okay, and they're different colors, but what have you. That's what most of the cards are in the pile. There's also some speculation cards, which have 2 different things on them. This one's flax and papyrus. And after you deal out the cards, there's this plague of locusts that's in the deck. At the beginning of each turn, a player will turn over the top card of the Nile. This is the crop that is currently being flooded. Notice it's on the flood pile. Any player who has wheat in front of them is going to take one of the wheat cards that they have, and they may have a stack of multiple wheats in front of them. They'll take the top card and place it in front of them. That's how you harvest. Those are the cards that you'll be looking at the end of the game. The player who turns over this card is then allowed to trade if they want. They can discard 2 cards from their hand and to draw another card, or to change the flood card. Let's say they don't like that wheat's being flooded, they want to change it to castor. The reason for that is when something is being flooded, like wheat is being here, then the current player may not plant wheat that turn. So they may wish to change it to get something, so that they, let's say they turn over wheat and they say, no, good papyrus, because I have wheat and I want to plant it. On your turn, when you plant cards, you put cards in front of you, starting a field. And when you do that, you have 3 different choices. You can plant 2 cards, or at least 2 cards, of all the same card type. So if I have 16 wheat in my hand, I can play them all in front of me. Play all the wheat that I can. Or I can play exactly 2 cards of 2 different crops. Or I can add to ones that I already have. In fact, if I have a wheat in front of me and I play 2 cards, I can add 1 here and play 1 here. So basically, you can play 2 different or as many of 1 as you can. The problem is you can't plant a field if someone else already has more of that field. So if someone else already had 2 wheat, I would have to plant 3 wheat to overcome them. If I do so, then the player who has the fewer wheat in their pile has to discard it, and I have mine. Ha 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 ha. So that's what the player does in his turn, planting. Or instead he can speculate. He plays one of these cards here. Actually, you can play 2 of them if you want to increase your odds. Say here, for example, I play the wheat, lettuce, and flax and papyrus. And then once he does that, the next person who turns theirs over, we pause, we look at the speculation cards. I drew papyrus, that matches one of my cards, so I get to draw 3 cards. If it had matched both my cards, I would have got 6. It's kind of a luck type game. But basically, what you're doing is you're trying to plant fields, beat everybody else out, and then hope that it turns over so you can start scoring these cards and adding them to your scorecard pile at the end of the game. There's a plague of locusts when that shows up. Basically, the person who has... We're going to draw another card to replace it. Whoever has the biggest field of that card that we draw is all eaten up. Yay for the plague of locusts. At the end of the game, and the game ends when you go through the deck a certain amount of times equal to the number of players playing the game, and it looks like a big deck, but it gets smaller and smaller because players are putting cards out in piles. You turn over all your cards. You will then compare how many cards you have of each type. So I'll put, let's say this is my pile. I have 2 wheat, 1 lettuce, 1 castor, 1 papyrus, and 1 flax. That's what I have in front of me. Then my score is equal to the lowest pile I have. So let's say papyrus, I have 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, so my score is a 1. This scoring is reminiscent of Tigris and Euphrates scoring, so you're trying to get an even number, not just as many of one kind that you can get. So whoever has the highest score wins. In case of a tie, you go to the second smallest pile of each player, etc. Eventually, somebody wins. If the game doesn't sound exciting, it's because it really isn't. There's the Plague of Locusts, and you're sitting there, when will the Plague of Locusts come up? But you're not really chattering and your knees shaking together. Everything else is really just sort of mild. I play, but it's actually, there's some fun to it. When you play with 5 players, it's a little chaotic. There's only 5 different kinds of resources. Only one player can have each resource. So you could end up for several turns having no resources in front of you. That's why I think 3 players is better, because the chance of having some resources in front of you is higher. And therefore, and also play goes much faster. You're not doing a lot. You're maybe buying a card, maybe planting some crops, and then going to the next person. You draw until you can make that big play. It's a light, fun game. Some people I played with enjoyed it. Some people I played with found it very boring. And with 5 players, the consensus was that it simply took too long. But overall, I'm not opposed to this. It's not one that I would ask for very often at all. But it is one that if I had people who came over who were very, very casual gamers, this would be one that's really easy going. You can kick back and talk and have a good time while you're playing. And hey, if you like the Nile, this is really up your alley.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.